right, welcome back everyone to the Celebrating Singles podcast. I am your host today, Christy, and you guys are in for a treat because we are flipping the tables around and I am going to interview Katherine for today's episode. Welcome, Katherine.
Woohoo! It's great to be here, Christy, in the hot seat. I'm ready for it.
I'm so excited for you to be in the hot seat. It's going to be awesome. Get ready, folks. It's going to be a wild ride.
That's right. That's right. What do we got going on today?
Well, actually, we need to give an update to our community. So, you guys, it's bittersweet news, but this is going to be our final episode of season 1. We are going to take a break from podcasting. Although, you guys, if you have not gone after, every single one of these episodes is chocked full of so much goodness. Like, the reason we started out on this project was because we felt the internet was in need of some of this goodness that our friends were carrying. And now we're actually going to work on some other things alongside this project. So get ready, you guys. We're excited. While we're going to take a break from podcasting, there are some things in the works to take this offline and in person to a city near you. So get ready, folks.
So fun.
We're excited. And just putting it out there. If you want to stay in touch with us, go to celebratingsingles.com, sign up for our newsletter. We promise not to spam you, but that is the best way to stay in the know. If you know, for in-person events.
There you go.
I'm pretty pumped and pretty excited for what's in the works. But we'll update you in the newsletter or over email as those things are finalized. But for today, Katherine is in our hot seat and I am ready and eager to go on this journey. So Katherine and I have kind of been on this journey together amongst a group of our friends who really decided to go after this topic. But honestly, Katherine, you've been the one carrying this alongside me and I've been so grateful. We've learned so much from interviewing, I don't know, now 20 some of our friends. Right. And going through this particular topic, but you are so chock full of amazing stuff that I'm excited to be able to get out and get into the hands of our community. Okay, so first, Katherine, in case people didn't see the other episodes, give us a little bit of context or an intro on who you are. You're amazing. I can introduce you too if you'd like, but tell us a little bit about yourself. Katherine?
Yes, fun. Hey, well, you know what? I kind of like ages on these podcasts. I just turned 30, so that's a fun fact. New decade, which is very exciting. Feeling a little bit more older, mature. Currently part of a startup, trying out life in the entrepreneurial world and a part of a startup, which is really exciting. So during this new decade, I'm like, okay, we need to set some goals and we're going to go after it. I feel like the last 10 years of my life, which probably hear a little bit more about, it's just been this amazing healing journey, which is I've shared a little bit on other podcast episodes of just this intentional decision I made in my early 20s where I realized I needed to abstain from dating and abstain from relationships because I recognized that there was this place where I was actually really putting relationships on this pedestal, so much so that it was just stealing from my life in a really unhealthy way. And so the last 10 years, I've been able to go on this amazing emotional healing journey. I feel like it's actually just set me up for this new decade now where I'm like, oh, I understand a little bit more about who I am, who I'm not, what I'm designed to do, things that I thrive in, and just places of unhealth in my life that I was able to really lay to rest, process through and all of that. So that's a little bit, we can dive into there a little bit more, but I guess that's in a nutshell what's going on right now.
I love it. Let's go. I mean, man, how encouraging and how exciting. But also I think for like some younger people in our community that are maybe in their early to mid 20s, like, man, we hope to speed this up for you. May it not take a whole time for you, right?
Yes.
It took more than a decade to figure out these things. And so it is definitely our heart to be able to help some of our younger folks in our community. So,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Yeah. And one thing I want to say, I think with me with that conscious decision that I made in my early 20s, and perhaps you're here today in this early 20s or later on, but I think one thing I realized is that I had to make this decision, like, am I just going to do what the culture of the day tells me to do? Like I was in this college party phase of living it up, doing fine in my schooling. It was great getting all my work done while I'm in college, all of that. But just wondering like, hey, do I really want to do what all these people are doing by continually dating whoever, giving myself away, like getting drunk, all this stuff, and like alcohol, not bad, whatever. But when you're doing this like multiple nights a week, different things like that, it's like, wow, is this what I want my life to amount up to be? And so I think that's really what led to that decision for me of being like, oh my goodness, all my friends that I'm surrounded with, they're great people and I appreciate them a lot. But also it's just like, I feel kind of empty at the end of the day and I need some vision for my life, you know? And so I think we really need to come to this place of recognizing like, oh, there's this idea that the culture puts on us of what it looks like to be cool, to be successful, to have fun, to make it, you know, whether like we're talking about romantic relationships, culture, lifestyle choices, all of that. And so I think that was a huge thing for me of recognizing like, oh, I don't want to just keep doing this as it is. And I think one thing we've talked a little bit about on the podcast, Christy, is like you talk about root issues, right?
Yeah.
And so can you just explain that real quick? Root issue?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say when we think about, okay, so roots of a plant, of a tree, right? So I think of my friend who talks about an apple orchard in the Bay Area, that it was like pretty clear that like the whole orchard had like gone bad. And they actually had to literally uproot the trees. They couldn't just like cut off some branches or whatever, but they had to completely start over. And so it's this concept that like the root system actually produces like good fruit on a
Mm.
tree. And is often like I would say like the impetus behind certain activities or behaviors or thought patterns in our life. So when we think about getting after the root, I think about like sexual promiscuity. Whenever I
Mm-hmm.
coach clients who are very sexually active, have multiple sexual partners, it's interesting. There's actually like a general root system where there's like an achievement bend towards this of like, who can I get, and finding value in that. Then there's also this other root system of abandonment and rejection, and this constant like need to find love, but finding it in the wrong places. And so when I think of a root system, there's like a root system behind the behavior that you're exhibiting. And so if
Mm.
you just try to like change the behavior, it doesn't really work. Like someone who's like, man, I really do not want to have as many sexual partners as I have. I don't want to continue down this path. There's a bunch of research to show how bad this is for our brains, how bad this is for, our physical health, all the things, emotional health, all of it. But they like can't figure out how to stop. And it's like because there's a root system behind those behaviors. So I don't know, does that give a little bit of a disclaimer?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Disclaimer of the root system. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think it's like you're saying, it's so important to be able to figure out, okay, the external isn't necessarily the issue in your life. It's the internal, it's the deeper underlying things. And I think for me, I was carrying a lot of rejection, like I said. And rejection, I think specifically related to my femininity. I felt like I didn't fit in with other girls. Like I had to try to be really girly or this or that, and felt really rejected for that. And so because of that, wanted to give myself away to people who would accept me, for who I thought, oh, they see the value in me. They see that I'm worth it. And so willing to give myself away to them in whatever way that would look like, But I think one of actually just like this bigger, more overarching root system is actually, like I said, this pedestal that I had put romantic love on. And because of that, it caused me to be confused about how I'm supposed to spend my time, what I'm supposed to focus my energy towards. It caused me to have the wrong friendships. It caused really everything in my life externally to change. And so I think that's one thing that I really had to start processing through, like, where did this idea come from that, like, I'm only satisfied and happy and content in life if I'm in a romantic relationship with someone? And so as I started to uncover that, I mean, we talk about it on the podcast time and time again, is like, oh my goodness, this is the narrative that we are being fed left, right, and center in society. And I've been really mentored by the culture in that area where it's like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been hearing my entire life. And now all of a sudden I'm in my young adult years and I'm coming to discover, oh, there's actually so much more than a romantic relationship. And so I think that was something huge in my life that I had to start processing through. And as I started to remove this idea of romantic relationship, as it started to take a lower place in my life, I was able actually to come to find my value apart from this place. And so I think even just being able to have breakthrough in that was huge. And it's something now that this is the new baseline of, oh, I get to find my value in who I am apart from romance. And now I get to build everything else on that.
So good. Katherine, come on. I have like a million questions about this, but I absolutely agree. Okay, so help us unpack that a little bit. Okay, so I think most people consciously aren't realizing that they are putting romantic love on this pedestal in their lives, right? But like, let's talk about what that practically looked like being consumed by either dating and or spending a bunch of activities to try to like find your person, right? Whether that be now on apps, whether that
Mm-hmm.
be going out to bars, going out and basically having your whole life activity surrounded by, okay, I need to go meet someone and
Yeah.
figure out who my person is. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, yeah, girl. And like in any area of your life, even like going to the gym. Why do I even want to go to the gym? Oh, I want to look really good so that someone will like me. Like just those mindsets, the why of what you're doing. Cause like the things might not be bad. Going to the gym is great. Absolutely. I love the gym. Like, but even for me, it was I wanted to go to the gym so that I could look good, so that someone would like me and I would be approved of, or I
Yeah.
went to the bar, yeah, so I could find someone to be with, whatever that looks like, right? And so it's like not everything is bad per se, but I think oftentimes it's the motive. And that became this obsessive thing in my head. Oh, I hope I'm pretty enough. Oh, I hope I'm good enough. Oh, they like drinking alcohol. They like doing this. Okay, I'm going to go do that to fit in with them. It's like this complete lack of value and understanding in who I am that I'm willing to conform to whoever wants to approve of me, and so it's
Real.
just this it's so real, but you don't actually recognize it until I mean, yeah, until I really started to make this decision of like, okay, let's actually start evaluating that and um
Mhm.
having my eyes opened to the decisions that I'm making and the why behind it. And I think that stuff, when you start getting really vulnerable with yourself, it's very eye-opening to see what you're dealing with, and it can be a little bit really painful and really difficult and frustrating. But oftentimes, if you look at it from the lens of like, oh, I'm just doing what I was taught, whether through mom or dad or through the culture, then you can actually come to have so much understanding and compassion for yourself because you didn't know any different, And so now when you're like, oh, I'm on this new journey, I get to figure this out.
Yes, I know. And I am so I'm grateful and thankful for the journey that you've been on, Catherine, because I feel like even in the last like few years that I've known you, you have done so much kind of that internal work.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been blown away by the person that you're becoming. And I mean, I loved you when we first became friends. You were awesome. And I feel like you do carry so much authenticity that I was like kind of like rocked by. I was like, dang, this girl really knows who she is. And to think of the journey even you've been on in the last few years, now like even more so. But I agree when you are consumed and even in your internal thoughts of like different things, like going to the gym, I can totally relate to that. Like that was the only reason I went to the gym. It was the only reason I worked out. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for my body to be healthy and knowing my value, but it was constantly like, okay, what is this? So I can look good for someone else. And I
Right.
totally agree that I think subconsciously most people are stuck in those thought patterns. And as I coach people and I'm talking through, like, even when I ask people about their future, almost no one at first, when I first start coaching them, can see their future without having a spouse.
Mm.
Which is a really unhealthy root system because there is a reality where you're going to have a future, whether it be 5 months, 2 years, or 5 years, where you are working towards that future of maybe marriage is your goal. And that's awesome. And we want to like celebrate that here. We are
Yeah.
celebrating singles, but we're celebrating singles because we like to celebrate humans that happen to be single. If those humans get married, we're all for that too. And we're excited about it. But
Right.
we are here to obviously establish value outside of that marital status. And we believe that that will make for healthier marriages and healthier families. But I think what you're pointing at, Catherine, is like this root system and these subconscious thoughts that are driving behavior that we don't even, I would imagine too, it was totally driving my eating habits, right? Not
Oh,
just going to the
for
gym,
sure. For sure.
literally starving myself and having really unhealthy eating habits
Yeah.
again, too, because, society says being skinnier is better or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, eating habits, what you're wearing, when you're putting on makeup and what makeup you're putting on, all of that, it's just to present yourself unto what having a partner, whatever that looks like. And depending on just how unhealthy you're at in these places, you'd be willing to go to more extremes to get what you think you need, right? So,
Well, and it's such a faulty baseline. It like
yeah.
breaks down, right? It really breaks down because then if everyone is looking to someone else to validate their value, like you get into a relationship, you get into a marriage, and that is just, it's not a good baseline. It's not a good foundation at all. It's going to break
Right.
down. Because
Right.
then you can't build off of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, totally. And then I think that's just the other idea that goes in, oh, when you don't get a partner, then all of a sudden you feel rejected, and like, oh, there's something wrong with me. It feels so shameful to be single. And, those are things that I had to process through a little bit as time went on, where I was like, realizing, oh, I'm getting older and people are getting partners now. And, oh, how do I actually feel about this? And all of a sudden, I think just realizing like we're so quick to put a negative lens on everything. Like we view ourselves so negatively, we view the world around us negatively. And it's like, oh, just because someone hasn't dated someone for a while does not mean that they're rejected. And so this was something that I had to really, once again, really chew on and mull over, where it's like, no, hey, my value, like I'm so important, so valuable, regardless of relationship status. And once again, I think this is that process, that neuroplasticity process of, this is something that you have to be conscious about in your thought patterns, because you can be quick to go back to, oh, I feel rejected. Oh, I feel this. But it's like, hey, actually, no, remember, this is the new baseline now that we're staying at, and we want to fight for that baseline. And so I think one thing I've come to realize, and I mean, this would be perhaps more of an issue for people as they get a little bit older, obviously this rejection piece longer with time, and it's a seasonal thing that you continue to grow in. But I'm realizing it's like, oh, I'm not rejected. Like the more I'm on this single path and eventually for sure want to have a partner, want to get married, I definitely want that. But it's like, oh, I'm actually just I'm getting more healthy. I'm getting more whole. And I'm kept. I'm like this beautiful, fine wine that just continues to blossom and just continues to get developed. And so I think, once again, flipping the negative to the positive, it's like, how can we actually see the beauty in this? And once again, by removing that pedestal of romantic love, I'm able to see now the beauty in this time of life that I have of, hey, I get to do things I've never done before without a partner. I get to grow and have healing moments with friends and family that I've been put in community with. And it becomes this exciting, beautiful time, because I'm not waiting for someone to necessarily come around right now. Would I love for that to happen? Sure, absolutely. Am I open to that? 100%. But like, all my eggs aren't in this basket of needing to date someone right now. And it's just been so sweet to be able to get to this place of probably the most contentment I've had, in my life regarding my singleness, which is so cool.
Let's go. Okay, wait, I really love this reframe. Like, instead of feeling shame or rejection about singleness, we are like a fine wine on reserve.
Yes.
Like,
On reserve, girl. Let's go.
shelf kind of stuff.
Hey, here's the thing too. You don't just drink the fine wine whenever, The fine wine comes out at a special occasion. You need to pay for that fine wine. Like not everyone gets to have the fine wine, right? So it's like, wow, how can we think of ourselves more like this, right? And know our worth, know our value, the importance that we carry, right?
This is so good, because I think too, part of, as I coach and as we go through the online course, it's really, really interesting. I try to help people figure out, like, okay, by not spending time and being intentional, like obviously I'm a big fan of taking the online course because it shows that you're being intentional about your singleness. And one of the things is really like where you're like going to the watering hole, or where you're like shopping from, or where like what network of people are you exposing yourself to. And on the dating apps, this can be really unhealthy for a lot of people. In fact, I coach a lot of clients that have decided to get off the dating apps, because you go on 10 dates and they're all really bad. And the 11th person is like a little bit better than the last 10. And then all of a sudden you're like willing to entertain this like pretty subpar option, even though, like, it's like not someone that you would actually want. Like, if you actually build your list, it is not someone at all that you would want. But because the last 10 dates have been so bad, you're kind of like, well, this guy's a little bit better. Maybe I'll, give him a chance. And that can be, it's the wrong baseline.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know your value. If you haven't established vision and you don't know your value, and you are not like with the right eyesight looking at the potential candidates, you're going to be operating from, again, some faulty lenses and a bad baseline. And so I really appreciate what you were saying, Katherine, of reframing your mindset, like getting out of toxic, like shame cycles, getting out of toxic, like self-hatred, Because
Yeah.
that is definitely a very slippery slope in singleness. Like if you're not in community and you're not intentional. And so like give a shout out to anyone who's like currently there. You don't have to stay there. I've definitely had different seasons and different cycles, but you do not have to stay there. And that is like a
Mm.
big impetus of why we've started this community.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, that's good. And just want to reiterate too, like the journey is so messy. It's so messy. But I think as you just decide to put in effort intentionally, little steps every single day, but also really making the conscious decision to cut out the things that are unhealthy, I think that was something I really had to do. And
Mhm.
and that's when I think having friends is really important that are in your corner who care for you, because they'll help call you out when things aren't going so well, and they'll just call you to a higher standard, which is really, it's really so sweet. But I think one thing that was here huge for me on the healing journey actually was living with healthy families. That was
Mhm.
huge because I think a lot of the things that I carried, the pain, the rejection, once again, these root systems that I had that were not healthy, that were producing unhealthy fruit in my life. A lot of the root system was from upbringing, right? Mom and dad stuff, all of that. And I think we get this idea that when we become adults, that we actually should just be totally by ourselves, go live by yourself, be
Yep.
alone, go in your home, do whatever you want, kind of close yourself off, build your own community according to who you care about. But I think one thing that's actually quite transformed my life over the last 10 years is living with healthy families. Um, whether that's I got to live with my sister for a few years when I first went on this journey, and she's 11 years older than me and got to walk me through a bunch of stuff. That was sweet. And then living with other families with young kids, and then actually living with a mentor family, older mentor family, actually it changed my life. And it's so funny because you don't really think about moving in with someone that you don't totally fully know, but it's these things where you're able to see these experiences. People are able to walk you through things that you never had, perhaps growing up or even in your young adult ages. That was, I think, just so transformative for me.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I think the silver lining of COVID was like a lot of people moving in like with their families or with their parents.
Mhm.
And, at first, maybe Western culture is like, what in your 30s, you're moving back in with your parents. But we had like obviously these unfortunate circumstances, which drove a lot of people to decide, like, man, I'm going to prioritize time with family right now. And I think it was so transformative. And I think actually, if you pull in Eastern culture, they do this and they do this really well. They
Mhm.
stay family. And it's not these singles living by themselves in a condo. And we have this like loneliness epidemic in the West, in particular. And so I love that. And like even choosing to live with mentors, I think such a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and really, I think coming against this identity that it's only about me, 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 instead of it being about us, right? I think there's so much beauty in like a collective idea with what identity is supposed to look like, because then you get to fall back on each other, right? And a place of belonging and where you're accepted and all that. And so there's so much more we could go into with that, but probably don't have to do that today.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's another question I feel like because you've really done this well. So we've talked about like the negative view of singleness, but can you talk about ways that you've kind of like entered into like places of pain or processing kind of past situations? I just feel like you've done this really well and have really modeled this even for our kind of group of friends of not being afraid of pain, not being afraid to process hard stuff and like actually going there. Can you talk towards that at all and kind of what you've learned?
Yeah, what have I learned? Well, I think it comes to this place where you can't avoid it after a while. This stuff just naturally comes up, I think, when you're willing to go on the healing journey and to be aware of perhaps unhealthy coping mechanisms that are in your life. So when you're willfully trying your hardest to abstain from those things and to actually face this stuff head on, then you're forced to navigate through that. And I think one thing that's been huge for me is having people that are like-minded in this area to be able to go after it together and to be able to share, hey, this is what's coming up in my life. Like, this is really painful. Can you help me? Even having friends, I think, to process through that for me for years was actually huge because I could not understand any of my emotions for years. Honestly, I had zero idea. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Nope, I'm not good. Like, that's all I really knew. I didn't know anything about emotions or how I was feeling or this or that. And so for a long time, actually, I needed friends to walk me through this. They would literally have to sit with me like I was a little 5-year-old kid, like relearning oh, wow, I feel like disappointed. I feel so frustrated. Oh, I feel really hurt. And so I think for a long time, it was this people needed to walk me through healing because I didn't even know how to walk myself through this. You know, I had been going on autopilot for so long, not caring about what I did, why I did it, or anything, that all of a sudden I needed people to help coach me through it. And so I think those were huge things at the start of my journey, that really having those people who care for me and who are really willing to go slow and to wait and to sit with me and to be so patient in the midst of that was huge, because then it actually gave me tools to go on this healing journey a little bit more by myself, being able to process through things in my journal, spend time in solitude, all of that, that I think really flipped the switch for me.
So good. Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. Yeah, I think, and another plug, the online course definitely gives you some practical tools on how to process some of the stuff. So if that is kind of where you're at currently, where you're like,
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm feeling some emotions come to the surface, I don't even know where to start, or I'm just unhappy with my life being a single, and man, seems like these girls are doing great. Like, we didn't start here, and
Right.
there are very practical tools that anyone can do. I promise, if I can do it, anyone can do it. That we love to be able to help give away to help people navigate this season and really build a better foundation and a better baseline to start dating from. So, yeah, way to
Mm.
go. And I feel like you've modeled this for sure for our group of friends. And so I can't believe that this wasn't a part of your journey before, but I'm grateful that it
Oh,
has been.
girl. Yeah, it's good. No, yeah, I had zero awareness in a lot of these things, you know. So just going, and once again, those are just things that you are taught, or in this case, not taught growing up, right? And so to be able to have healthy friendships, even healthy community, healthy families, to be able to coach me through things like this has been really such a game changer. And I think that's really such a beautiful thing about life, is that we never have to be a product of our circumstances, right? And there are real things that happen to us that are so painful and so traumatic, but just the beautiful thing is that we can experience healing, growth, and we can really have redemptive experiences from the past, you know, if we're willing to go after it, and if we have healthy community, healthy counseling, all of that in our lives, right? And so it's so fun. And yeah, I think I'd love to share one thing that's actually just been a game changer for me lately. In this new, I think, you know, being single for an extended amount of time, there's just so many things that you learn about yourself and what all that looks like. And one thing that's been such a game changer for me, I think, is stepping out to try new things that normally you would have a partner to be able to do in your life. Oh, you know, I think for us sometimes as women, it's like, dude, we just want the husband to whatever, take care of the house, you know, he can fix this, take out the trash, all of that, whatever. And so on a superficial level, there are things like that where it's like, oh, I get to grow and I get to do these things and discover this by myself, you know. But there's been a few bigger decisions that I've made in the last couple of years in my life personally, that I was just feeling so disqualified in, that I was like, oh, like, I thought I'd be better at this. Like, man, I kind of suck. Like, what is that? You know, that negative self-talk that's popping up, like, oh, I expected more from myself to be able to be better at this. And so all of a sudden I was just like taking a lot of this disqualification is what I was feeling like. I was like, man, I feel so disqualified. What is this? And I was just processing through this in my journal. And once again, I'm like, oh, where's this negative lens come from? And what is this? And I was able to kind of trace that back to something that I had like grown up with, you know, childhood times. And then all of a sudden I was able to get the inverse of that, because oftentimes our beliefs are formed with our experiences, right? Whether good or bad when you're young. And then it kind of creates this cycle of your beliefs being reformed by these experiences that are going to continue to happen and happen again. And so I was like, man, where did this disqualification come from? I was able to kind of find it as I searched back in my life. I was like, okay, there's some definitely a lot of disqualification being a child, just growing up in kind of a super performative family, sports, all that stuff. So anyways, it was wild. I was able to figure that out, and then to come up with a new, like an inverse of what this disqualification was. And what I realized was like, oh, I'm just on like a time of discovery. Like, I'm not in this place of where, oh, I just suck and I'm not good enough and this negative self-talk, whatever. But it's like, I'm actually discovering who I am and what I'm good at once again, and what I'm not good at. And I think this has just been such a beautiful journey for me, because once again, we're so quick to, oh, you shouldn't start this, you shouldn't try this, whatever. And it's this, as we get older, there's this kind of mastery that comes that is expected. Oh, you just have to be good. You have to be perfect. You have to be the best. You have to be this and this and that. And like, we lose the wonder and the childlike wonder in life and this exploration, this discovery, all of that, And so there's just been this amazing flip that's been switched to, oh, I'm not disqualified because I'm trying new things. I'm not that good at it yet. I'm simply just discovering how to do this, discovering what works, discovering what doesn't work. And I think I've been able to take that in anything, in a business setting, in a interpersonal relationship setting. Oh, we had conflict. I said the wrong thing. Woo, what did I discover in that? It's like, and it removes all this like shame that you could feel for screwing up or making a mistake or not being good enough, where you're just like, oh no, I'm just discovering. And so I think that's one thing that I really want to take into my life. And I've been trying to do this more, is like this, childlike understanding that I'm just on a journey and I get to grow and I get to learn, and I don't have to force perfectionism on myself or the world around me, and so really being intentional to see, oh, how am I viewing the world? How am I viewing myself? And, on that note of trying new things and discovering things, it's like your greatest place of insecurity that you might have right now, whether in the workplace or whatever, could actually be your greatest place of breakthrough into like your destiny, what you're actually supposed to do, how you're designed, things that you're really good at that you could operate in. And so I think it's so important for us to continually try these new things, have that good self-talk, and go after the negative stuff and just be proactive to keep stepping out and trying new things. I think especially depending on who's listening, depending what age you are. For me as a 30-year-old, I'm still so young. We're not even like a third into the game, hopefully here, like how can I expect to know everything about myself now at 30 years old? And it's like this idea that the world puts on you, like, oh, you should probably have everything figured out by now. You should know what you're doing, what you're not doing. It's like, no, like I'm still just discovering. And so just saying no to those external voices, slowing down, trying these new things. And I think being here for the journey is just something I'm learning right now. So
let's go. There's so much there. So discovery over disqualification. Like, what a powerful way to reframe like the journey that you go on as a single. Like that's
right.
powerful. That is straight fire. Like I love this. This is really
Yeah.
good. And then also I think like having grace for yourself, like or having like this like just like grace may be the word for it. Like a grace for yourself to go through this season. I think the shame that our culture puts on singles is kind of it's irrational and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because I'm like, well, wait a minute. You have been through a divorce, or you've been through 2 divorces. I mean, I've got friends now like that have been through 2, and it's like, well, wait, that is also shameful. It's like, well, wait a minute. Let's just all admit we don't have all this figured out. Like, oh, turns out like I got a lot of stuff that I need to deal with and a lot of stuff that I need to work through. And whether I'm single and doing that, hopefully in community, but in close relationships, whether it be friendships or with other family, or whether I'm working that out in a marriage. And then, unfortunately, in some cases, then a failed marriage. It's like, let's just all admit there's some root systems here that need to be worked on. And that one is not more shameful than another. And like, also let's remove the shame from like these mistakes and, whether it be you're single and never been married or you're single again. I think I love the power of words and like discovery over disqualification, I think is really powerful, Katherine.
That's good. Yeah. Thanks, Christy. Yeah. And then once again, just carrying that into my daily life, right? And we're so quick to forget though. Any little new thing that you're learning, you got to be so intentional. Like, I'm going to grab a hold of this. And I'm still grabbing a hold of this one like wholeheartedly right now, because there's some places where you're still tempted to feel disqualified. And I'm like, oh, it's trying to creep in again. I'm like, get out of here, so.
That's where friends are helpful, because we
gotta
like
have them.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So okay, so this has all been so good, Katherine. I'm so encouraged. I think one thing though that I definitely also want to call out in our friendship is, Katherine, you have like leaned into really hard feedback and really hard conversations with me that I have been honestly so thankful for. But that was something that we've cultivated in our friendship that I don't necessarily have in a lot of my other friendships. I do have a little bit. But I think we should talk about this, because I think this is like pretty unique and something that you've really leaned into. So like you'll catch something I'll say and you'll like kind of like go in for the kill and be like, wait a minute, hold on. Is there something behind what you just said? And it's usually negative self-talk. it's usually something, a lie that I'm believing about myself or a lie that I'm believing about my circumstances. But I think it's been a journey of taking that maybe constructive or maybe in some cases negative feedback, right? Of something that like, ooh, this is not good and shouldn't be there. But instead of taking it as rejection of like, oh, Katherine doesn't like me, Katherine doesn't like this part of me, she's like calling out something bad. Instead, I've learned to actually, no, this is my friend. She cares about me and she's trying to help. Like she wants to help. And if I'm willing to lean into that hard conversation, there's so much value. And there's something when I was working at Facebook headquarters, they had a company value that feedback is a gift. And I think, Catherine, you're so good at leaning in to constructive feedback and calling out some things that you see that I don't even see that have been blind spots. And so I don't know if you want to talk towards that at all, but that's been a
Wow.
huge gift to me in our friendship.
Yeah, so great. I mean, that's an amazing statement. Feedback is a gift. That's another one of those lenses that needs to be switched, right? Because oftentimes, like you just said, we think of feedback of difficult conversations as rejection, when actually, if we recognize that the person's there for our good and for our benefit and for our growth, then I think that's a different foundation that you're actually sharing from in that place, you know? And I think that's just what we've cultivated, Christy, is friendship and love for one another and a desire to grow together. And so we need each other to see each other's blind spots, right? And I think having that basis, that foundation of love and wanting to grow, then makes those conversations easier, you know? And it's not me coming out of, oh, you should have figured this out. What's your problem? It's like, hey, wow, what about this, you know, and just coming in with a different lens, different thing like that, I think is really important. But honestly, I think if you want to have growth in friendships, you can't not have feedback, right? Because as you get closer to one another, things are automatically going to surface because there's two very different people who are coming together in friendship, right? Which is the same with relationship, whatever that looks like. And so I think for me, I've gotten this place in my life now where I appreciate feedback more than ever because I want to grow and I want to do better. And I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to frustrate them or whatever, to the best of my ability. And so I've come to appreciate feedback more than ever.
Totally. No, it reminds me of a story that one of my friends shared with me. He went golfing here in Hawaii, and it happened to be like there was a famous golfer here. And he was talking to someone who was working at the golf course. And he happened to be like also sitting next to the swing coach of this like professional golfer. And my friend was not really well versed in golf or whatever. I'm not either. But apparently he was like, can you help me understand? Like, this is one of the best golfers in the world. Like, why does he need a swing coach? And the guy said, oh, well, it's obvious because you can't see yourself swing. It's like you need a coach because you can't see yourself swing. You can't see what you're doing wrong. You can't see your positioning, right? Your hips, your knees, all the things. Like
Right.
that's as far as my golf skills. But like, oh, it's easy. You can't see yourself swing. It's like everyone needs a swing coach. And like,
That's so
Catherine,
good.
you've been my swing coach.
Swing
Like,
coach, girl.
self swing, but you can. And usually it's out of like whatever's coming out of my mouth. You're like, wait a minute, I think you're believing this lie. And you like grab it and catch it. And that has been so helpful to pull me out of like negative self-talk, negative thought patterns, which is why in the online course we talk about, we call it a workout buddy. I give you a workout buddy, a swing coach, whatever you want to call it. But I think a practical with that is just like finding a friend who you have been able to trust with some deeper, more emotional stuff and inviting them into this and saying, hey, I'm actually working on, some personal growth. I'm wondering if you would be open to entering into, this kind of feedback loop with it mutual. I think it's best when it's mutual. Obviously, you can get a mentor and advisor, and that's good. But I think friendships play a really key role in this area because you just naturally are going to see more in someone's life than like a once a month call.
Yeah.
And, but like having that be on the table of like, hey, are you open to receiving some hard feedback? Like I've noticed some stuff in your life that might be a blind spot. I think in the past, I would get frustrated with someone and I'd be like, oh, why are they doing this? And I would just totally write them off as a friend, sadly. And I would never give them that feedback. And I'm like, dang, like, man, now more mature Christy realizes like, I don't have to be frustrated with that thing in that person's life. I bet you they don't want it there either.
Right.
They don't want to be Debbie Downer. They don't want to constantly like every social gathering be there and be the Debbie Downer. Like you could give them that feedback. Like, hey, this is kind of experiencing you. This is why you're not getting invited to places anymore. But I think bringing that When emotions are not high, when you're not in a situation where that particular thing in someone's life is bothering you or frustrating you, but like when it's a neutral ground, being like, hey, would you be open to exchanging hard feedback with one another and giving feedback as a gift? Like, would you be open to practicing those muscles? Those are going to be really important. You start dating and get married, you're going to have to
Right.
share feedback. Turns out
Yes.
like, that person's going to be in the know anyway. So developing those skills as a single is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. Okay, well, real quick then, what do you think the practicals are for giving feedback?
This is good. Yeah. I mean, the sandwich model does work, and it works
Hmm.
because it's like helpful when you honor someone and then you give the hard feedback and then you follow up with another piece of like a positive. So the sandwich is like positive, constructive feedback, positive.
Hmm.
Um, it works. It's like cheesy, but it works really well. Even when you're
Right.
doing photo, someone can maybe kind of tell, oh, they're doing like the sandwich model, but it does work. I think really though, coming from a place of like it's actually getting your heart to the right place. So giving someone the benefit of the doubt and believing that they actually have good intention.
Hmm.
Used to say, again, one of the culture pieces inside of Facebook was that, assume good intent. Even when you're
Mm,
experiencing someone in a negative way, you can assume good intent. And
right.
so that's something that you can really just like fix your heart in that assuming good intent and then ask questions. Hey, I
Right.
heard you say this. Did you really mean this? Did you actually mean to go there? That sort of thing. So those are some practicals of giving good feedback. Katherine, I want to hear from you. Like you're so good at this, I feel like. So I'm curious, what are some practicals of entering into some conversations, delivering or receiving hard feedback?
Those two quick ones that you didn't mention, Christy, would be setting apart the time to bring the constructive
Mhm.
feedback to make sure that you're not doing it from an emotional place and making sure that the person's okay with you sharing it at that moment. Or if they're not, then setting apart a different time for you to be able to share that in a way that's healthy and works for the person. And everyone receives feedback differently. Some people are like, just give it to me. Like, I'm ready for it. And others are like, oh, like you need the sandwich model. You got to come in nice and tender. And I think always too, just like really affirming the person on the other end of it is really so important, right? Like the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's this and this and this that's available for you, and you're trying to empower the person through this. So I think that's huge. And then also, um, often I just share about like how I feel around this experience with them and what that looks like, so that it's not me pointing the finger at them, but it's like, oh, this is how I experience you when you do this, or this is, you
Mhm.
know, making it more about less about me trying to talk negatively towards them as much as it's just sharing the experience together and what that looks like. Does that make sense?
That's super good. Yeah, no, I think that's fire. I think that's totally relevant, and can really set apart, I guess, and help people. Because receiving feedback, if you don't have that muscle, is really hard. It is
Yeah.
not fun at first until you get some reps of like, oh, wow, this person is for me. The reason they're sharing this feedback is so I can grow, right? Getting
Hmm.
out of the lens of like all constructive feedback means they're rejecting me, like getting out of like those high either trigger type scenarios or emotions. We've all had them, right? Those
Yeah.
squishy spots of like, like, oh my God, this person, we're not consciously thinking this person's rejecting me, but like, oh my gosh, are they breaking up with me as a friend? Or they, we've all had kind of different traumatic situations of relational trauma.
Right. Right.
And so, obviously, setting apart that time I think is so valuable, but then just getting some reps in of receiving hard feedback and then continuing in relationship.
Yes, that's so good.
Not
Yeah, I
like,
think absolutely the commitment piece is so huge, right? There's safety in being able to share and grow with one another when there's a commitment to each other and not just being like, "Oh, I'm just giving this to you and then I'm out of here because you're messed up," you know?
right.
Which there's a time and place for boundaries, all of that, right? But I think overall with friendships, we definitely need more commitment towards one another.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think like faithful are the wounds of a friend too. Like, I think in some scenarios, like, the reality is the things I'm working on have hurt my friends. And that's
Mhm.
been obviously a painful part of the journey. But there has been actually really, like, really, really valuable growth, I think, in my friendships that were willing to like press in through that versus giving up on the friendship. And as you said, there are toxic relationships that you need to practice boundaries and like get out of. But there is actually a lot of health in not self-protecting, not I'm a recovering avoidant, here we
Mhm.
are, like pressing in through that moment And then actually the relationship is much stronger as a result of those really hard discussions and conversations. And I definitely have had friendships like that over the years where I'm like grateful that someone didn't eject from it and was actually continuing to be willing to be in that space with me, even though I'm very far from perfect and definitely on my journey of growth.
Yeah, that's been a fun one for me with conflict. I mean, another kind of big aha moment I've had over the last couple of years is turning fear to adventure. And so I've been currently taking fear of like conflict, fear of, yes, confrontation with people, and turning that into adventure. I'm like, oh no, I get to grow through this. Like, I'm going to call this person out. Like, we can do this. This is an adventure. It could be a little rough on the waters for a minute, but it's an adventure and I'm here for it, you know? And so I'm like, how can I take this optimistic, once again, point of view into things that are scary and big and could be difficult, and just go from there.
So good. I love it. Well, Katherine, man, this has been so amazing. Thank you for everything that you shared. Man, what a way to wrap up this season. Like, seriously, I've been so encouraged and I have like so much to process after this for myself. So I hope that this has been a blessing to each and every one of you that have been listening. We have had so much fun and we are just getting started, man. There is so much more. I think as we have put this out into the world, there are other people joining in regards to this kind of mission and vision of celebrating humans who also happen to be single, regardless of their marital status. And so be on the lookout. Again, go to celebratingsingles.com, sign up for our email. We will not spam you, but we will keep you in the loop. And if you know, you know, there are going to be some in-person events coming in hot. There are going to be some online cohorts starting up. And if you're interested in taking a group of friends or a community through this, we're interested in hearing from you. Or if you have other ideas for us, man, we would love for this to be a group effort to throw down. We do believe it's going to take a group of people to drive this change in our culture, but we're excited for it. And yeah, we just want to give a big shout out and thank you to everyone who's joined so far. It has been an incredible journey. Season 1 of the podcast, it's a wrap. So, okay, you guys, we will see you soon.